Evening Chanting, Book 1, page 19. To the Blessed One,
the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One.
The teaching
so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma.
The Blessed One's disciples
who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Now let us pay preliminary homage to the Buddha.
Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One.
Now let us chant the recollection of the Buddha.
A good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the Pure One, the Perfectly Enlightened One. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the Accomplished One, the Knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy.
Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Buddha.
The Buddha, the truly worthy one, endowed with such excellent qualities, whose being is composed of purity, transcendental wisdom, and compassion, who has enlightened the wise like the sun, awakening the lotus. I bow my head to that peaceful chief of conquerors, the Buddha, who is the safe, secure refuge of all beings. As the first object of recollection, I venerate him with bowed head. I am indeed the Buddha's servant. The Buddha is my Lord and guide. The Buddha is sorrow's destroyer, who bestows blessings on me. To the Buddha I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion By its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
Now let us chant the recollection of the Dhamma. The
Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards, to be experienced individually by the wise.
Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Dhamma.
It is excellent because it is well expounded, and it I am indeed the Dhamma's servant. The Dhamma is my Lord and guide. The Dhamma is sorrow's destroyer, and it bestows blessings on me. To the Dhamma I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk this excellent way of truth. For me there is no other refuge. The Dhamma is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Dhamma and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
Now let us chant the recollection of the Sangha.
They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the four pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world.
Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Sangha.
Born of the Dhamma, that Sangha which has practiced well, the field of the Sangha formed of 8 kinds of noble beings, guided in body and mind by excellent morality and virtue. I revere that assembly of noble beings, perfected in purity, the Sangha which is the supreme, secure refuge of all beings. As the third object of recollection, I venerate it with bowed head. I am indeed the Sangha's servant. The Sangha is my Lord and guide. The Sangha is sorrow's destroyer, and it bestows blessings on me. To the Sangha I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk the well-practiced way of the Sangha. For me there is no other refuge. The Sangha is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Sangha and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
take a short break and then come back for the precepts and then the Dhamma talk. interested in taking the 8 precepts and 3 refuges, they're on page, you could start with a request, and so that's on page 131, for a group from a monk, and then I'll start on page 133. You can begin by bowing. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Saranakamanang nittitaṃ. Panatipata veramani sikapadaṃ samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana veramani sikapadaṃ samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Abrahmacharya veramani sikapadaṃ samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Meriya Majapamadhatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Meriya Majapamadhatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikalabhojana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Vikalabhojana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times. Nacha Gita Vadita Visuka Dasana Malakanda Vilepana Dharana Mandana Vibhusanatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
Uchasayana Mahasayana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
Imani atta sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikkhapadani silena sukating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibuting yanti tasma silang visodhaye.
Sahampati Katanjali Nadi Varamaya Chata
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang anuttarang upajayang namasami. So it's both Saturday night and our Lunar Observance evening. I was speaking with my mom yesterday and checked in with her today, and she was doing something a little bit unique, and I was just thinking about how the future of things work out, and how we have expectations about what's going to be, and we start things or we do things with that expectation, and then things happen in life. And my mom's 83 years old now. And her grandfather, my great-grandfather Max, he was, I guess in his younger years, late teens and early 20s, he collected, I think it was old pots and pans, and then he did something with them. He got them kind of used again. And also something with cloth as well. I remember seeing a very old photo of him from the 30s, dealing with some old cloths and something like that. But then he somehow had an idea he was going to start a plumbing manufacturing business. And so I'm not sure how he did all that, but he seemed to have connections and a bit of luck and know how to do things. And so he was successful in doing that. And one of the places where he set up a factory was Kokomo, Indiana. And there was a small Jewish community there, and he was inspired to provide them with a synagogue. He didn't live in Kokomo, Indiana. He lived in Chicago. And I didn't realize the coinciding of when he actually started this, but it was 1942, which is when my mother was born. And so my mother and her sister, my aunt, who's 82, or 81, sorry, went and drove this morning. They got up around 5 and started driving to Kokomo, Indiana, which was a few hours away, to go to this synagogue that was 83 years old. And the reason they were going was because this was the last Sabbath for them. This was the last Sabbath for that temple, because the Jewish community there had grown so small that there was only about 10 people kind of attending, and it wasn't really enough to keep it financially going. And so I was just thinking about how, something is started and begun, and there's a hope of it continuing. And of course, 83 years, that's a long time to have an institution going in a particular town, to have a synagogue or a church or something like that. And for us here, just thinking about, kind of like thinking about my mom, I was thinking about, what was that like for her? But I don't think there was a lot of involvement in that synagogue, but it was still interesting to think of, like, in one's mind, there's a legacy there, a legacy there of something changing and ending. And even in I was thinking about that with Abhayagiri or any of our monasteries, or the fact that on our pilgrimage we just saw so many ruins of monasteries, so many ruins of monasteries on top of more monasteries that had been built. But then in many places they were now memorials. And even Abhayagiri, I'm just imagining, like, it's likely someday Abhayagiri will close its doors for some reason. Whenever it'll be, whether it's 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, 500. Just not sure. And sometimes there can be a lot of concern about the future of something or some place, or what's going to happen, or who's going to be there. And really, it's just the mind. It's just the mind kind of creating these more distractions for us to really think about, or worry about, or be concerned about. And there's really as much as we try to kind of know things or perceive things, or even monks opening up a particular monastery, or anything really happening that we're doing, that we're starting in our lives, we have no idea of the outcome, and often we're just trying to predict what's going to happen, but we're also sometimes holding to a hope and a projection in our minds that something's going to occur. And even more so, we do that in our daily lives with so many things that we do. We start things, we do things, and it's with this sense that it's just gonna keep going. There's we have a purpose, and in the end, the Buddha consistently had a teaching around control, and that we don't have any of it. We can't control a lot, which doesn't mean that we can't exert effort and have good results from that effort. But it does mean that we can't count on anything. We can't really count on even our parents being around for a certain amount of time, and anything in our lives. Our own health is something. My aunt has lived a very long life, but at 81 now she has third stage pancreatic cancer. And that's very much changed the perception that my mom has had. Whenever she's with her, she knows that there's limited time. But my mom's also 83, so we don't really know. But being 83 we have no idea, but being 83 is different than 17. So most likely 83 is closer. It's closer to that time that we can see we have only a limited amount of years left. And sorry, Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sure you don't want to hear that, but it's true. And so all of us it's amazing to me how often we can really get into these sort of frivolous, or I do it all the time, and sometimes it's amazing to me. I think, why am I getting into this right now? This has nothing to do with something that's really going to help me. I just should be able to let go of it. And sometimes it's difficult to let go of what it is we're doing. A lot of times our opinions about other people, or the struggles we have, or just kind of habits we get into. I was thinking about hobbies. Just talking to people about their hobbies, they can just seem so random, what we get into. And for myself, I can see that as well. It's just like, how did that take off in the mind? And often it's just it's distraction. We're distracting ourselves. That's not to say that there are definitely wholesome hobbies, wholesome things that we can learn, skills that we can learn that are helpful, and especially when Dhamma practice is sometimes dry, then when we do have a skill that's helpful to ourselves or others, then it's good to have that as a backdrop that we can rely on, something that we feel confident in. But a lot of times we can get involved in things that just they're kind of helpful, but they're really just, the world just keeps going on, you know. I was talking today to a gentleman who brought his dog, and I was talking about how many of us had, when we were in India, you know, a small part of being in India is just, there's just dogs around everywhere. And they seem to congregate around the holy sites, because I think compassionate people tend to go to the holy sites, and then they see these kind of mangy, starving old dogs. Some of them actually not too, they don't look too bad. But there's a feeling of wanting to feed them or help them. And so I was there was a moment when I was talking to this man, and I said, yeah, I think like and I started to think like, how could solve this problem? Well, there's no problem to solve. This is life. This is normal. You know, there are people around who don't have enough to eat, and we try to help them as we can. Dogs around, but there's no real ending of this. This has been the human condition for a long time. There's always going to be something to improve, something to change, something to make it better. And it's good that we devote ourselves to helping as we can, but sometimes we can do that to distraction, and it isn't always to our own benefit. And then if we cut off the Dhamma from our lives by engaging in helping or just doing things that we like to do, then it's just another engagement with samsara and another turning around in our next life. And so one of the things I think to reflect on that's very beneficial is just thinking about the time that we have left, and just consistently kind of bringing it back to asking ourselves, what do I want to do here with my life? There's precious time to be had here, and I might think that I can count on good health or good circumstances continuing, but it's just not necessarily the case. And so we, in a skillful way, we ask ourselves, like, okay, well, if I only have a day left, or if I only have a month left, or some of you have heard about this practice, a year to live. So you pick a day. You don't wait 10 years to do this, but you pick a day and you say, okay, this is going to be the day a year from now that I'm going to die. And then you work with that. You bring it up each day. And so as a reflection, it's very beneficial for us to try to keep steering ourselves in the right direction. And that's not easy to do. The propensities in our mind tend to want to steer us towards quick results, quick fixes, and things that we can enjoy easily and in the shortest amount of time. So, you know, if we're to ask ourselves, like, well, what do you want, like nibbana or dessert? Well, it's obviously, we would say nibbana. I mean, I hope most of us would say nibbana. But when it comes down to it, like, if we're really practicing the Dhamma, we're practicing the Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma, not with just our desires or how we want things to be. So it's so hard. It's to kind of always have this on the line to make the right choice. But something that Ajahn Jayasaro has been really encouraging in so many of his Dhamma talks is that we need to really try to develop a different perception in our mind, because it's not enough to correct behaviors. Just say, okay, I'm not going to do it, check it off the list. Didn't have dessert today, good for me. Nibbana or bust. Because we falter. You know, we try our best, and it just doesn't always work out for us. So we keep trying to get up and dust ourselves off. But one of the things that we can change is our love of learning, is to really kind of see that if we move towards a passion towards our ability to learn new things and to understand, then we have the potential to really kind of provide ourselves with enough motivation to really gain an incredible amount from the Dhamma, and that is a perceptual change. Because it's hard to love learning. Learning takes some effort, and it is an actual habit that we need to try to engage with. I think after like college, I was just like, oh no, I don't want to do any more studying. I don't want to look into anything anymore. Just give me a break for a while. But that doesn't mean that necessarily the education system in the United States is providing what real learning is about. So what we want to do is, I was starting this talk kind of essentially looking about how we want to try to control things, and that becomes a strong habit for us. Is that we're trying to deal with anicca by creating control in our own minds. And what that's doing is in a way, it's sort of blocking out that potential to learn, because we're trying to set up conditions where I can see this is going to work, and we can obsess about how we're going to make something work out for us, or that we have certain control, or you look at knowing something like, what's the schedule going to be? Who am I going to live with? What's going to happen next? How am I going to control this? How am I going to figure this out? We look at the weather. What's that about? It's like, how can I control my situation so that I'm not experiencing a lot of unpleasantness around the weather? But when we focus the shift on learning and a desire to learn, then we sort of, that takes a back seat, because ultimately when we're learning, we're recognizing that there isn't any control that we really have. We have an effort that we can make and good intentions we can make, and the Buddha has definitely taught us that has its results, that has beneficial results for us. But we don't always know how it's going to turn out. And when we're interested, though, we're interested in that process, and we're interested in what it is that we're doing, then we really have that potential to let go of those things that just aren't important for us. But this is a skill. I think this is a skill to develop. I would say that one of the things that can occur in monastic life is we can get very inspired, and we might get inspired through experiencing particular states that we haven't experienced for, like calm or more peace or more understanding. We might have some insights into the Dhamma, or we might be very inspired by the teachers we see. Being around Lumpur Pasano, it's just one of the monks was talking about how just listening to his Dhamma talks now, there is a sense of a being who has mastered the craft of what he is engaged with, and that has been a Buddhist monk. And there's a mastery as of really explaining, understanding and explaining the Dhamma. And so we can really be very inspired meeting beings like this and being around them and having long-term relationships with them and time with them. But without that sense of interest in our own understanding, then I don't know if it's possible to really get too far in practice, or one might be able to somehow sustain a life of practice in that way, but I don't think it's going to be so beneficial. And what does it mean to have a love of learning? What does it mean? It means that we actually put effort into a sense of paying attention and being interested in the results. And sometimes this is very hard to do. How many of us have engaged with our meditation, and we go through an hour and we think, I didn't learn anything, or we get complacent with it. It's one of the things the Buddha warns so much about, is that it's easy to get complacent. You just, this is what I do, I'm doing my practice, and then we sit down, and it's not really about learning, it's just doing what I've been, doing in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Just watch the breath, and practice gets sort of dry. But when we start to kind of see, like, well, why is that, and what's happening with our experience? How can I change this up? Maybe this meditation object I've been focusing on isn't so beneficial. I've been doing the same thing for 20 years, and what if I tried something different? We were with Lumpur Viradamo for an evening in Bangkok. Right before we left, it was quite a sweet encounter with him, and after just hearing about the monastery and talking to him about how things are going, so the monks asked questions, just some Dhamma questions, and it was very interesting to hear him. He's been emphasizing this over the years, but he said, well, when he was talking to another person, he was finding that they were really emphasizing the object of their meditation, and they were very object focused. Or it might have been, I can't remember if it was a teacher or a group, but this was what he was talking about, that you can have an object of your meditation. I focus on the breath, or I focus on Buddha, or I focus on metta meditation. And Lumpur was saying, well, he said, well, this isn't exactly something you would, he was being, I think, very deferential, but he says, you're not going to see this exactly in the suttas, but he said, focusing on transcendence, the awareness itself. What is the experience of being aware? And that's not something that you might always hear in teachings, the quality of your experience when you are paying attention, rather than just the object and what is the object doing and how am I seeing the object, and that the mind can be very focused on that, but rather actually looking at the experience of awareness, what that's like, then we have a very different sense of what is going on with what we're paying attention to. I mean, right now, just ask yourselves, what is awareness? Are you aware right now? How do you know that? What is the feeling of awareness? What is the feeling of being aware? Now, we might have never asked ourselves that or thought about it, but it's just another point of kind of changing things up a little bit in how we're perceiving our own experience. And if we're not trying new things and really thinking about things outside of the box, like kind of, what am I doing? How am I doing it? What is beneficial for me? Then we're not necessarily engaged in learning. We're just kind of doing a process, and sometimes we're learning a little bit, or we're just doing what we're told. But when we're challenging ourselves, we're really trying to look at our own experience. Then that can be incredibly beneficial. So right now, I mean, what's going on for anyone listening right now? Is there anything in one's experience that is a defilement, that is something that's unwholesome? How did that get there? And you might say, oh yeah, I can identify something that's wholesome and unwholesome. But when I asked how it got there, I mean, do you know how it got there? The process of knowing that is actually what the Buddha is encouraging with right effort. Right effort is learning. It's knowing when we see that a particular wholesome or unwholesome experience has arisen, we're aware of that. but we're also aware of how to prevent it or how to encourage it. And we're also aware how to sustain it or to end it. And we might not be paying attention to that. That's something that takes, it's, the word effort is interesting. Like it's not something that's negative. We sometimes think of effort as, oh, I gotta really work harder. But it just means that we're trying to actually exert ourselves in a way that is beneficial and is going to give us results that they're cutting edge. It's the cutting edge of our practice. But this takes a lot of energy to bring up for ourselves. We have to try, and we have to encourage ourselves over and over again. Because the tendency is just to kind of fall into our own habits. And so this can definitely occur with our own practice, our spiritual practice. We can move into just habitual ways where we're not really getting anywhere. And so we need to challenge ourselves, and this isn't easy because it is a lot easier just to kind of do our own, follow our own kind of tendencies, our own desires. And this is where, again, complacency sets in. And why does it set in? Because effort's not easy. It's like exerting ourselves isn't easy. It's much easier to kind of fall into old habits and just kind of keep doing what we're doing. So right now it's mid-December, and on the next 2 weeks for our community, we're going to be starting our winter retreat. So for us, this is a really important time to prepare for what we're going to be doing. For the monastics who are here, even those who are on the retreat crew, it's not like those who are supporting us are also not on retreat. They're on retreat as well. So all of us enter into a very different mode of being in the monastery. And just like we're preparing to, in certain ways, shut down certain aspects of the monastery, especially not engaging with projects, but trying to prepare the monastery for what's to come in terms of the facilities. We want to be doing that with our own minds. The next 2 weeks are very important for us in terms of doing that. It's not as if we just want to kind of bumble along and do our thing, and then we're going to kind of just really exert ourselves and put all this time into formal practice. Well, that's going to be difficult because if the retreat starts like that and we're still following a lot of old habits that we know are unskillful for us, then we're going to kind of be like kind of hitting a wall at first. And so we do want to prepare ourselves for what's to come. And if it doesn't come, so be it. We'll figure out what to meet when we get there, or how to meet it when we get there. But what we can encourage ourselves is how to look at these next 2 weeks to develop this. If we think that it's beneficial, to develop more of a sense of how can I learn about what would be more beneficial for myself. What am I seeing in my own practice that's not working out? How can I shift gears, change my perception, and surmount old habits that are holding me back from greater understanding? So whether one is preparing for a winter retreat like we are doing here, or it's just a sense of questioning what we're actually doing with our practice, it's always beneficial to kind of ask ourselves and to look like what is the quality of my experience and the quality of the way I've been engaging in my spiritual life. And though it takes a fair amount of energy and effort, it's always beneficial to kind of move in a direction where we're trying different things, we're trying to switch things up, we're going, we're willing ourselves, willing to be uncomfortable, willing to move into areas that are more unknown and ultimately a little more difficult for us, so that we really train ourselves to be open to more possibilities around what it is that might be the better direction that we can engage in. So, as I mentioned, tonight is our observance, our lunar observance evening, and so there is an optional vigil for those who would like to continue practicing. You can sit and walk and engage with the practice into the evening. At midnight, there'll be some tonics, or what we call allowables, that can be put out in the kitchen and the monk's room. And if there's anyone who still is interested, you can continue practicing till 3, and then there'll be perhaps some monks around at 3 to close that time with some morning chanting. Just to remind people also, there's tomorrow's an open period, so there won't be any morning or evening, won't be any 5 a.m. morning puja or 7 p.m. evening puja. And we'll just have the morning chore and breakfast and a meal.
Page 66, Reflection on Impermanence. Handamaya manjang satipatam banamase Sabe Sankara Anicca. All conditioned things are impermanent. Sabe Sankara Dukkha. All conditioned things are dukkha. Sabe Dhamma anatta. Everything is void of self. Aduvam jivitam. Life is not for sure. Dhruvam maranam. Death is for sure. Avasamaya Sammasambuddhasaraham
Sammasambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Namiwami
Swagato
Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasam
Supatipanno
Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham